Picture yourself standing on a bustling city sidewalk when, without warning, fragile white eggs begin tumbling from the sky. Your instincts kick in, and you stretch your arms, leap, juggle, sprint, anything to catch those eggs in time. Yet, no matter how quick or agile you are, a sickening crunch accompanies every drop shell. That was the nightmare young surgical resident Peter Attia replayed night after night during his training at Johns Hopkins. The eggs were patients, and the pavement was the hospital floor. The lesson he drew from each shatter was brutal. Modern medicine reacts only after damage is done. In Outlive, Attia proposes that we climb to the roof and stop the eggs from falling at all. For most of human history, medicine moved at a crawl. Ancient physicians like Hippocrates relied on observation and guesswork, performing bleeding and purging to restore balance in the body. 1,000 years later, the Black Death swept across Eurasia while doctors waved incense to chase off bad air. This pre-scientific epoch is what Attia calls Medicine 1.0. Everything changed when inventors turned microscopes on the world, revealing tiny microbes that cause infection, and when researchers and laboratories began conducting controlled experiments. The emergence of germ theory, the discovery of anesthesia to block pain during surgery, the development of antibiotics to kill harmful bacteria, and the introduction of vaccines to prime the immune system forged Medicine 2.0. This heroic era more than doubled the average human lifespan by defeating infections and patching trauma. Yet that triumph came with an unintended trade-off. We now live long enough to succumb in slow motion to a quartet of chronic killers. Metabolic dysfunction when the body cannot properly manage energy and nutrients. Cardiovascular disease affecting the heart and blood vessels, cancer arising from uncontrolled cell growth, and neurodegeneration from progressive nerve cell damage. Attia calls these threats the four horsemen, and he argues that Medicine 2.0, brilliant at emergencies, still waits far too late to confront those gradual threats. Medicine 2.0 shines when a wound needs stitching or an infection needs an antibiotic, but it waits until a problem has already crashed through our defenses. By the time a patient notices symptoms, years of hidden damage have already piled up. Imagine a slow leak in a tire. If you only check the air pressure after the tire goes flat, you have missed all the warnings along the way. That is exactly how metabolic disease and heart disease slip past Medicine 2.0. Enter Medicine 3.0. Prevention takes priority over reaction. Personalization replaces a one-size-fits-all approach. Risk is embraced, measured, and managed rather than ignored. And Healthspan, the years of healthy, active life, is pursued with the same zeal as lifespan, the total years lived. It is not enough to reach 90 if you arrive frail, foggy, and miserable. The question becomes how to build an operating system for a body that must thrive for 10 extra years, or perhaps 20, without relying on luck or futuristic science fiction therapies. Attia organizes that operating system with 3 nested rings. The innermost ring defines the objective behind seeking more life and describes what you will do with it. Perhaps you want to dance at your great-granddaughter's wedding, still clear-headed enough to recall her name and strong enough to lift her for a hug. The middle ring defines the strategy as a broad, evidence-based game plan that connects today's habits to that future vision. The outer ring defines the tactics as concrete, adjustable methods that play out in 5 domains: exercise, nutrition, sleep, emotional health, and externally applied molecules such as medications or supplements. Objective gives purpose, strategy supplies logic, and tactics deliver action. Before building tools, Attia studies blueprints drawn from people who reach 100 or centenarians. These centenarians show that extreme old age is defined by delayed disease rather than superhuman vitality. When researchers map a centenarian's medical timeline, they see the horsemen's diseases arriving decades later than average, sometimes never breaching the surface. Genetic analyses reveal no magic longevity gene. Most centenarians carry the same gene variants that the rest of us do. They simply postpone the moment those genes collaborate with environmental factors to spark illness. In other words, they compress the period of sickness rather than pretend it will vanish, and they maintain youthfulness well into advanced years. Part of the answer to delaying the horsemen hides inside every cell. A protein complex called mTOR acts as a cellular switch that balances growth and repair. When nutrients are abundant, mTOR orders cells to multiply. When calories dip, mTOR quiets down. The cell's recycling process, called autophagy, revs up, and damaged components are cleared out. Rapamycin, a compound discovered in soil from Easter Island, dials mTOR toward repair even without famine. Studies in mice and yeast show that rapamycin administered late in life can extend lifespan by as much as 15%. That finding energized longevity research, but rapamycin also weakens the immune system and slows wound healing. Attia treats it as a cautious experimental lever rather than a miracle pill. Its real importance lies in the concept that growth and repair form a seesaw, and modern lifestyles slam the growth end to the ground. The imbalance in modern life is nowhere clearer than in metabolism. Imagine two fuel tanks in your body, one for quick energy, stored as glycogen in the liver and muscles, and one for long-term reserves, stored as fat under the skin. In an evolutionary setting of scarcity, both tanks filled slowly and emptied often. Today, calorie-dense foods overflow the system, while inactivity prevents any drawdown. Subcutaneous fat under the skin reaches its limit, and excess energy floods into organs as visceral fat around the organs. Muscle cells become full of fat droplets and stop responding properly to insulin, the hormone that regulates blood sugar. The pancreas overproduces insulin to compensate. Blood sugar rises, inflammatory proteins increase, and the first horseman mounts its steed. Nearly half of American adults meet criteria for prediabetes or diabetes without even realizing it. Critical warning signs appear years before a simple fasting glucose test sounds an alarm, because measurements of waist circumference, blood fats called triglycerides, levels of high-density good cholesterol, blood pressure readings, and fasting insulin levels will whisper warnings long before medical thresholds are crossed. Cardiovascular disease, the second horseman, begins with microscopic particles rather than visible fatty plaques. Low-density and very low-density lipoproteins, plus a carrier called lipoprotein A, ferry cholesterol through the bloodstream. Each particle carries a protein tag called ApoB. The higher the number of ApoB carriers, the greater the buildup at artery walls. Once stuck, these particles oxidize, trigger immune cells to respond, and form foam cells that bulge into plaques. Over decades, these plaques can rupture, like volcanoes, unleashing clots that block blood flow in the heart or brain. Traditional cholesterol panels measure only the mass of low-density cholesterol, but it is the particle count of ApoB carriers that truly forecasts risk. Genetic factors worsen the picture. About 1 in 5 people inherits a dangerously high level of lipoprotein A, yet doctors rarely test for it. Measuring ApoB and lipoprotein A in your 30s, 40s, and 50s lets you tame risk long before stents and strokes become the only option. Cancer, the third horseman, is evolution inside your own body as cells rebel, mutating rapidly and growing without restraint. Two promising vulnerabilities emerge in research. First, cancer cells hijack metabolism through a trick known as the Warburg effect, fermenting glucose even when oxygen is plentiful. Therapies that block these metabolic pathways or mimic the stress of fasting can weaken tumors so that traditional drugs finish the job. Second, cancer often evades the body's defense by hiding from or corrupting the immune system. Modern immunotherapies relearn how to train T cells to recognize and destroy rogue cells, achieving remissions that can last for years. These treatments remain specific to certain cancer types and carry severe side effects, so prevention delivers enormous leverage. Maintaining metabolic health lowers levels of growth factors that fuel tumors, reduces chronic inflammation, and cuts off hormonal fertilizers from malignant seeds. Early screening methods, such as colonoscopies by age 45, low-dose lung scans for longtime smokers, high-resolution prostate MRI, and emerging blood tests to detect tumor DNA fragments further multiply survival odds. Neurodegeneration, the final horseman, seems the most intractable. Alzheimer's disease revolves around two misbehaving proteins, hard deposits called amyloid plaques and twisted strands called tau tangles in brain cells. Billions of dollars have targeted amyloid removal with little clinical success. Attia urges a wider view. The brain consumes a fifth of the oxygen your body uses at rest. Any drop in blood flow to the brain due to stiffened arteries or high blood pressure starves neurons. At the same time, insulin resistance robs neurons of their sugar fuel, and oxidative stress from unstable molecules damages synapses. Carrying one copy of a gene variant known as ApoE4 doubles the risk, and carrying two raises it 12-fold. Yet genes do not dictate destiny. Lifelong cardiovascular fitness, strict blood sugar control, anti-inflammatory eating rich in omega-3 fats, consistent deep sleep, and mentally demanding hobbies build cognitive reserve, delaying symptoms even in high-risk individuals. Your brain's lifespan bends to your lifestyle as much as your body's lifespan does. With each horseman profiled, Attia introduces 5 tactical domains, starting with exercise. Think of VO2 max as the maximum oxygen your body can process to generate energy. That capacity declines with age, but targeted training can double or triple your percentile compared with peers. A 25% increase in VO2 max can halve your risk of death from any cause. Muscle strength is equally vital because age-related muscle loss reduces your metabolic sink, exposes you to fall risk, and diminishes production of anti-inflammatory factors released by muscles. Progressive resistance training, fundamental movements such as loaded carries and single-leg balance drills, and spine-protecting hip exercises combine into what Attia calls the Centenarian decathlon, a personalized set of late-life tasks to master over decades of training. Next comes nutrition, which Attia frames as nutritional biochemistry rather than diet trends or moral crusades against macronutrients. You can dial 3 levers: total calorie intake, the proportions of protein, carbohydrate, and fat, and the timing of meals. Calorie restriction alone often fails people because hunger and muscle loss sap energy. Adjusting macronutrients lets you match your intake to individual metabolism. Wearable glucose monitors reveal that the same oatmeal bowl causes wildly different blood sugar spikes in different people. Maintaining high protein intake protects muscle. Balancing types of fats and driving unhealthy trans fats towards zero supports cellular health. And choosing whole, fibrous carbohydrates over refined starch preserves liver function. Compressing eating into shorter windows or adding intermittent fasts can bolster cellular repair processes if muscle and activity levels remain high. No single tactic fits all. Constant testing and iteration guide improvements. Sleep may feel passive, yet it is your body's nightly maintenance window. Deep, non-dream sleep clears metabolic waste from the brain, rebuilds bone marrow, and fine-tunes immune responses, while dream sleep integrates memories and regulates emotions. Chronic sleep curtailment keeps stress hormones elevated, disrupts appetite-controlling signals, and fosters inflammation. Shift workers with disturbed circadian rhythms face skyrocketing rates of obesity, diabetes, heart attacks, and dementia. Optimal sleep hygiene means a consistent schedule, dimming blue light in the evening, cooling the bedroom, cutting caffeine after midday, limiting alcohol, and winding down away from screens. Prescription sleep aids may induce unconsciousness but blunt natural restorative architecture. Attia recommends them only under short-term medical supervision. Emotional health can be the stealthiest pillar. Attia shares his own decades-long struggles with rage, shame, and perfectionism that undermined his relationships and self-worth. Unhealed trauma can morph into compulsive behaviors, overdependence on others, automatic emotional reactions, or difficulty forming secure bonds. These patterns raise stress hormone levels, disrupt sleep, and drive self-defeating habits that shorten health span. Practices such as therapy, skills for managing intense emotions, mindfulness meditation, intentional breath work, community service, and honest conversations about loneliness deliver longevity benefits no blood test can measure. Finally, exogenous molecules act as pharmaceutical patches. Cholesterol-lowering drugs such as statins, ezetimibe, and PCSK9 inhibitors sharply reduce the number of harmful cholesterol particles and cut heart attack risk. Blood pressure medications tame arterial strain. Metformin, a common diabetes treatment, improves insulin sensitivity and may lower cancer risk, though its role in healthy people remains unproven. Hormone replacement restores vitality for men and women whose levels fall outside normal ranges. Omega-3 supplements reduce inflammation for those who avoid oily fish. Vitamin D supports bone and immune health in those who are deficient. And cautious low-dose pulsing of rapamycin under expert supervision explores the frontier of cellular repair. Each molecule is a carefully chosen tool, rather than a cure-all. Medicine 3.0 demands rigorous data collection. By your mid-30s, you should establish baseline measurements including fasting insulin levels, an estimate of insulin resistance, a sensitive marker of inflammation, counts of cholesterol-carrying particles, tests for heart stress, liver and kidney function panels, a bone density and body fat scan, a VO2 max assessment, a hand strength test, sleep tracking, and if curious about cognitive risk, a neuropsychological evaluation, plus optional genetic testing for Alzheimer's risk. Critical labs and scans repeat on a yearly to multi-year schedule, and fitness tests occur quarterly. Trends over time, rather than isolated snapshots, guide precise course corrections. Where does motivation come from? Craft a vivid mental scene 10, 20, or 30 years ahead. Imagine snowshoeing along tree-lined trails with your spouse at age 85, your lungs clear, knees steady, and mind sharp. Maybe you see yourself laughing with teenage great-grandchildren over a virtual chess game, calling each by name without searching for memory. Let that vision imprint on your brain. Every workout, every healthy meal choice, and every early night becomes a vote for that future. Attia warns against chasing immortality. The goal is not endless existence, but a greater area under the curve where both capacity and joy remain high. Though most deaths cannot be scheduled, health trajectories can be bent. The true enemy is not time itself, but preventable decline. So, climb to the roof, count the eggs before they fall. Upgrade your cellular hardware through consistent movement, feed it wisely, let it rest deeply, calm the mind's software, and, when prudent, apply pharmaceutical patches. The blueprint is yours, and the longevity project spans a lifetime. Start today, because one incontrovertible truth links medicine 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 alike. The pavement never stops cracking shells once they hit. Catch them early, or better yet, never let them drop.